Hey, this is Ken at Capital Advantage Tutoring. It's my job to get you past the Series 63, the 65, and the 66 exams. So a lot of people want a cheat sheet, and this isn't like really a dumb sheet, but this is a good cheat sheet for the regulations of broker-dealers, agents, IAs, and IARs. Let's get into it. And what you want to do is when we're done, take a snapshot of it and have it up on your wall so you can always keep an eye on it. Let's get into it. Okay, so here's a little chart. Again, it's not all encompassing, compensation, whatever it is, whatever. I don't even know the word that I'm trying to think of. I guess all encompassing, but it would compensation, condensation, trepidation. I don't know. Okay, so here's the deal. So we're gonna start with broker dealer and investment advisor. And again, it's not an all inclusive list, but it's a good hot sheet to have. So we're gonna start with the broker dealer. A broker dealer is always a firm. Remember that. A broker dealer is always a firm. And remember, if you see the word execute, they're talking about a broker dealer. Execute transactions, it's always a broker dealer. It's not, they can give advice, obviously, but on this test, whether it's a 63, 65, or 66, always think executing. And remember, even if an advisor gives advice, they can't execute. They have to give it to a broker dealer to execute. They charge commissions, markup, markdowns. Commissions on agency trades, markup, markdown on principal. You can even write that here if you want. Now, remember something. They register no matter what with the SEC and FINRA. It's kind of not negotiable. All broker-dealers are registered with the SEC and FINRA, SEC and FINRA, and then any state they do business in, okay? So it's any state they do business in. Ignore the no office for a second. Any state they do business in, which means either they have an office or a retail client. So I say no office, no retail, no register. If they have no office and no retail, they don't have to register. Again, if they have one single retail client, there's no de minimis here. If they even have one retail client, they have to register, or if they have a place of business or an office, which is the same thing, in the state, they have to register. But remember, they're not going to register in every state, but they will be registered with both the SEC and FINRA. This is the only entity that's registered with all three. It's the only one that registers with SEC, with FINRA, and the state. And remember, no office, no retail, no register. Canadian broker-dealer, they don't register if the client is just visiting, okay? They don't register if the client is just visiting. Now, remember something. This is not an everything list, but it's a good way to keep in mind that, remember, the rules are pretty simple. It's the questions that twist you around. So the whole goal is to know the rules pretty cold and know these rules, so that even if they throw a twist at you, because that's a question, they'll throw a question at you to make you think there's an exception when there isn't. So if they only deal with institutions, broker-dealers don't have to register as long as they don't have an office. But once they slap an office in there, they ought to register. Canadian broker-dealers, if they have an existing client, not a new one, they can solicit new clients. A Canadian broker-dealer, I don't know, I spelled it right. I have no fucking idea. A Canadian broker-dealer does not have to register if their client is just visiting. If they have an existing client who is visiting the US, they do not have to register. Now let's jump over to the investment advisor. We'll do the firms first. Investment advisor, again, is a firm. It is always a firm. Yes, there's an example on some of the vendors where an IA or broker-dealer is a sole prop, and it could be an individual, but it's still kind of a firm. So stick with the firm. They recommend or they give advice as a business. That's what they do. So if you see the word recommend, did I spell that wrong? Again, hold on. I think I did. Hey, look at that. It magically fixed itself. Recommends. So if you see the word recommend or give advice on securities, then think investment advisor side, not broker-dealer side. Yes, broker-dealers can give advice. And remember something. When does a broker-dealer have to register as an IA? Well, they normally don't. So the broker-dealers are not IAs, but they would have to register an IA if they start charging for the advice, like a rat fee or something like that. So for broker-dealer is not an IA unless it starts charging for advice. Okay. Let's get on to this again. The investment advisor is registered SEC or state, never both. Now, get that in your head. Never fucking both. Never both, never both, never both. If you're SEC registered, you're never going to register at the state. If you're state, you're never going to register at the SEC. Now, things could change where it happens, but you're never going to be at both. Remember that. Never at both. So if you have an assets under management of 110 million or more, you have to register with the SEC. Or if you're a mutual fund advisor, if your client is a mutual fund, you're automatically federally covered and you have to register with the SEC. If your assets under management are between 100 and 110 million, you can choose to register with the SEC or state. Or if you're in 15 states or more, you can choose to register with the SEC. I even think the pension consultant one is the same thing, but I leave that out. Now, if you're under 100 million, you're going to register with the state only. Now, I'm not going to put this in here because it's too confusing. But if you start federal because you're over 100 and your assets drop as low as 90, you're good. You don't have to do anything. But if you go below 90, then eventually you'll have to you'll have to do an ADVW to get out of this federal and into the states. But that's a story for another day. So again, investment advisor is a firm. They give advice. They charge fees on that. They can charge performance-based fees if the state allows it, stuff like that. And they can charge assets under management by the hour, whatever you want. But if they're over 110 million, they have to register with the SEC. Or if they're customers, if they're an advisor to a mutual fund, they have to register with the SEC. If they're between 100 and 110, choose. 15 states or more, choose. And under 100 million, they have to register the state only. So here's what happens. If you're a federally covered advisor, you will not have to register in the state ever. If you're a state advisor, then if you have an office or 5 or more clients, so let's do it this way. If you have more than 5, if you have an office or more than 5 clients or six or more, that's the same thing. Remember, more than 5 is the same as 6 or more, because more than 5 means 6 or more. Okay. So if you have an office or six or more clients, okay, then if you're Fed covered, then you just notice file. No registering, you're notice filing. If you're state IA, then you have to register in that state. If you're a federal covered advisor, which means you're registered with the SEC, you never register in the state. But if you were to meet the definition, it means you either have an office, place of business, or 6 or more clients, then you would have to notice file in that state. If you're normally a state covered advisor, that means you're not registered federally. Any state where you have an office or 6 or more than 5 clients, same thing, then you would have to register. Now remember, plate. Plate. They say late. They all say plate. Late. I say plate. Publishers, lawyers, accountants, teachers, engineers. Remember that. Publishers, lawyers, accountants, teachers, engineers. Those 5 things. If they're giving securities advice that's incidental to their business and they're not charging a separate fee for that, then they would not have to register as an IA. If the publisher, lawyer, accountant, teacher, engineer, if they're giving it general securities advice or securities advice as part of their business and they're not charging separate for it, they would be exempt from registration on the state level or any level. An agent is an individual. Remember, it may be called a person. The word person covers everything here. You can have a legal person or a natural person. A legal person is like a firm, like a corporation, a school, a town, a city, whatever it is, government. An individual is a natural person, and that's an individual. And remember, the SEC does not register individuals. Remember that again. The SEC does not register individuals. So where does the agent register? Either FINRA and the state. I do a lot of editing because I'm clearing my throat like crazy. Allergies are killing me. So an agent registers with FINRA and then any state they do business in. That means if they have an office, or even one retail client, they have to register. So again, if they have an office or even one retail client, they will have to register. The exception is if somebody goes on vacation, they will not have to register. And again, this is a basic chart for the rules. You can add your own shit to it, but it's a basic chart to keep your shit straight, okay? You put it on the wall, you blow it up, make it nice and big, put my happy face on it, whatever you want to do. What do they call them? I forgot what they call them, those things you put on the wall with a fat head, right? And I got it. I got a fat head. I got a fat body, so I'll go with the fat head. Agents register with FINRA always, and then any state they do business in. If they have office or retail, they have an office or a retail client, they have to register. If they're on vacation, if their client or they are on vacation or the client's on vacation, they do not have to register in that state. Okay. If the client moves to the state, then they would have to register within 60 days. Now, remember something. If the broker-dealer is exempt, so is the agent. So if the broker-dealer is exempt from registering, so is the agent. And the reason that means is that if you have a client, then that's the broker-dealer's client too, right? So if the broker-dealer doesn't have any clients in a state, then neither can you. Because if you put a client in there, then it's yours and the broker-dealer's. Okay. Now, the other one is if you work for an issuer. If you're an agent of an issuer. Now, let me go back to this for one quick second. If you're an agent of a broker-dealer, whether security is exempt or not, doesn't matter. See, I don't mention securities in here, right? So agent of a broker-dealer, even if you sell exempt securities, exempt transactions, you have to freaking register. There's not an exemption. But here's the difference. If you work as an agent of an issuer, not of a broker-dealer, of an issuer, and you're selling exempt securities or exempt transactions, you do not have to register. Yes, the books talk about like there's only 5 issuers and all exempt transactions. Don't worry about it. They're not that granular. So the deal is if you're an agent of an issuer and you're not getting paid for it, and it's an exempt issuer, an exempt transaction, you don't have to register. Only if you work for the issuer. If you work for the broker-dealer, then you'd have to register. So let me give the explanation. You work for a broker-dealer. Your cousin works for an exempt issuer. And you're both selling the exempt issuer securities. You have to register because you're a broker-dealer. Your brother doesn't. There you go. Cousin, brother, whatever I called it. Okay. Now let's jump to the individual side of the IA. Now you see broker-dealer and agent. I can't circle because it's all in white. Broker-dealer, and agent. They're on the same side of the line. They're the FINRA side, okay? Agents work for broker-dealers. Keep that in mind, okay? Now the IA side, it has an IAR. An IAR is an investment advisor representative. Again, that's an individual. An IAR is an individual that works for an IA. Boom. If you want to start charging a wrap fee, if you're an agent and you want to start charging a wrap fee or some sort of performance-based fees and stuff like that, or assets under management, you have to go to with an investment advisor and become an IAR under an investment advisor. Remember that. An IAR is anyone who gives advice or supervises those that do. You can even write it in there, but I'm not going to. An investment advisor rep is someone who gives advice for an advisor or supervises those that do. So you don't even have to give the advice, but if you supervise them, you do. Now, here's where people get screwed up. If you're an IAR for a state level advisor, so your advisor is registered with the state, then you have the rule that if you have 6 or more retail clients or you have an office, you have to register. That's the bottom line. If you work for a state advisor, if you work for a federal covered advisor, then you only register if you have an office in the state. Remember that. So the only way, if you work for a federal covered advisor, the only way that you would have to register in a state is if you have an office there. I have an example that when I was at work running an IA with the Australian bank, we had one guy in office. We had one guy in Chicago, and he said he didn't have an office. And this is, I didn't realize this, right? This is 5-6 years ago, almost 10 years ago. I was in New York. We had a guy in Chicago. I keep wanting to say an office is in Illinois, and he didn't register. And I said that was weird. And by mistake, I was looking into it because I didn't know the rule that if you didn't have an office, you didn't have to register. If you were, he had like 30 or 40 clients, and I said he should be registering. And before my CCO could stop me, I started looking into it and found out he actually did have an office he was working out of. So we had to make him register. So it was like a happy mistake, right? So my CCO was kind of happy that we figured that out before we got in trouble. So we fixed it. But again, if he did, the impression was that he didn't have an office. So he wouldn't have to register. But since he had an office, he would have to register. So again, if you're an IAR for a state level advisor, there's 2 points. If you have either 6 or more retail clients or an office, you have to register. On the federal side, if you work for a federal covered advisor, if you have an office in the state, you have to register. But if you have no office and you have 30,000 clients, you do not have to register. So the number of clients does not matter. Now, this is a nice little cheat sheet. I think you can take a picture of it. You can add your own shit to it. I think it's pretty good. It gives you like a basic rundown of the basic rules. And if you know these, really, it helps with a lot of questions on the registration of broker dealers and stuff like that, and IAs, because it's one thing. And remember, they're going to throw you questions that are going to try to trick you and make you think that these rules don't apply. That's their job, right? They shouldn't do it that way. And I'll speak to them this week about that. They're not going to listen to me, but they have to listen to me because they'll be drunk, but they're going to ignore me after they walk out. Okay. Again, this is a nice little basic one. They throw questions at you. They may throw a trick. If you guys see something on here that you think I should add in and that would help and that you guys have used, feel free to do it. Now, one last thing. Second to last thing. Remember, broker-dealers use Form BD, IAs use Form ADV, and IARs and agents use the U4 form to register. Okay, I have one more thing I'm going to show you, which is kind of cool. Now, this will help you a little bit. Again, it's not perfect, but it does give you an idea. Here's what happens. So if I want to know what's not something, so they say, other than the IA, we have the plate rule, right? But if they say what's not something, like what's not an advisor, what's not an agent, whatever it is, I have this little thing. So here's my list of things, okay? They could always add more, but it kind of works with this one. What I do is I say, what's not a broker-dealer? I cover the broker-dealer. Boom. Everything on there at that list is not a broker-dealer. So let's say I say, what's not an agent? Boom. Those are not agents. What's not an IA? What's not an IA? Boom. Cover that one. What's not an IAR? We'll cover that. So I create this list of these things: bank, issuer, broker-dealer, investment advisor, agent, and IAR. And I say, what's not this thing? Cover that thing I'm talking about, and everything else uncovered is not that thing. So what's not a broker-dealer? A bank, an issuer, a broker-dealer. That's a weird thing to say. What's not a broker-dealer? Boom, covered. What's not a broker-dealer? A bank, an issuer, an IA, an agent, an IAR. What's not an IAR? What's not an IA? I'm trying to talk too fast. That's what happens when you do this at midnight. What's not an IA? A bank, an issuer, a broker-dealer, an agent, and an IAR. Do you notice something similar? These are never. So remember, I always say banks are like fucking ghosts, right? They're never there. They never have to do shit. And an issuer is not a broker-dealer, not an IA. And that's definitely going to come up in a question where they go, which of the following is not a broker-dealer? And you got to go through that list. Okay. And this, I promise you, it'll help you. Okay. Also, yeah, I think that works. I'm not going to add anything else in. I'm just going to make it worse. Guys, thank you very much. Please remember to join me every Tuesday and Thursday night for a free live Q&A. Yes, I'm still doing this free live Q&A every Tuesday and Thursday, 8:30 p.m. live. Or is it member? Y'all